Hello, what's up YouTube photographer Ronix for the another. In this tutorial you're going to be learning skin retouching from the very start to the very end. And if at all you're a beginner out there, this is a tutorial for you. So in this tutorial you want to learn about frequency separation as a skin retouching technique, and most of you are asking me to do a tutorial about a light skin complexion model, and here we go. So right now, if at all you haven't hit the like button, I'd request that you hit the like button on this video, because it's going to help you to push and recommend this video to many beginner photographers and retouchers out there. So simply hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. So I'm just going to be showing you the concept of frequency separation. Frequency separation is a skin retouching technique that helps us fine-tune or retouch specific areas independently, and when we refine both areas, by both I mean the textures and the colors, after refining them and you combine both layers, you end up with the same image that has been perfected or corrected regarding the blemish removal or even the tonal range values of the image. So that is what we are going to be doing, and before we proceed, we have to simply first of all crop the image in a ratio that we need. So just come right here and get the crop tool, and with the crop tool you can change the ratio depending on the size that you want. So I'm just going to crop the image in a ratio of 4:5. I'm just going to crop in my image just like that. So this is okay. I'm just going to crop in a little bit so that it can be a little bit centered. So this is okay, and I'm simply going to hit enter to approve the crop settings. So after we are done cropping the image, the next thing is going to be doing the skin retouching. So in order to do skin retouching, we have to create two layers that contain the colors and the textures. So by coming the background layer, simply press Ctrl J twice. So we're going to come and press Ctrl J twice right here. Ctrl J, or you can use Command J twice to create these two layers. So apart from the background layer, we have two other layers that have been created. So with these two layers, we are going to be creating our frequency separation, or we are going to be separating the frequencies of this image into colors and textures. So by double clicking here, you can rename it to color. The lower layer or the middle layer is always the color, or some people call it the low frequency layer, and this is our texture layer. So like the name suggests, in this layer we only want to remain with the colors, and in this layer we only want to remain with the textures. So we're going to hide the texture layer and come and select the color layer. So we want to remain with colors in the color layer. So just come right here. You're going to come to filter, and we're going to come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So when you come to Gaussian blur, this is the most important step when it comes to frequency separation. So this step determines the amount of textures that you want to remain with in your final retouch image, and it is the most important step when it comes to frequency separation. So we're going to zoom out and we look for an area that seems to have more skin textures than the rest of the image. So by blurring out the prominent details or the prominent textures, it means even the tiniest details in this image are going to be completely blurred out or lost out. So we left click on the radius slider, you left click and hold down, and you drag up as you're releasing so that you can see the effect happening to the image. So you want to stop at the point when these textures are just starting to disappear from this very image. So I can still see them. So just want to stop at the point when the textures are just starting to get lost or disappear from this image. So at around 7, that is when these textures are just starting to disappear. Don't take it all the way up until when you can not completely see the textures. Take it up to a point when the details or the textures in the skin are just starting to disappear or get lost, and you can now come and simply hit OK. So when you click on OK, you can notice that the image is going to be a little bit blurry, as you're going to see after this filter has been loaded over the image. You can see that we have now lost out on the details or textures of the image. So we are going to come and select the high frequency layer or the texture layer and now activate it. And after activating it, we are going to come to image right here, and we are going to come down to apply image. So when you come to apply image, it is going to open up the apply image dialog box or the window right here, and The source is the name of the image. So we want to extract the textures from the color layer. So just come and select the color layer right here. Make sure the channel is set to RGB, and the blending is the most important step for this step. So the blending, you can notice that we have 16-bit and other images are going to be 8-bit. So for a 16-bit image like I have right here, the blending has to be add for a 16-bit, opacity at 100%, preserve transparency and mask cannot check. The scale has to be 2 and offset 0, and you turn on the invert option, and you can see that the textures are on the gray kind of layer. Then if at all you're working with an 8-bit image, these settings are going to be a little bit different, but it's going to be producing the same results like we have right here. So if at all you're working with an 8-bit image, the blending has to be set to subtract, and the invert option doesn't have to be turned on. The scale has to be 2 and offset 128. Preserve transparency and the mask are not checked, and you can see we have the same results. All the textures are now on the gray layer that is lacking colors. But since I'm working with a 16-bit image, I'll change the blend mode back to add, and I invert this. The scale is 2, offset 0, and I'll simply click OK. So we want a blend mode that is going to reveal back the colors or the color information in this very image. So we're going to change the blend mode from normal and change it all the way to linear light right here, and you can see that we have the image back the way it was meant to be. So after we have done this, the next thing that we are going to be doing in this case is putting these two layers in a group by pressing Ctrl on the keyboard, or you can use the command key for Mac. You can left click and select both layers, and you drag them into a group folder or a group icon right there, and there will be groups. So you can rename the group to frequency separation. I've named it FS for purposes of being uniform and organized. So after doing this, you can open up the frequency separation group, and the next thing is going to be doing the skin retouching. So in order to do a skin retouching, remember we want to fine tune the colors alone, and also want to fine tune the textures alone and make them look better. So in order to do this, we first of all want to work on the colors of this image. So you just want to make the skin tones look uniform in this case. So we're going to select the color layer, and after selecting it, simply come to our brushes. You can right click and get the Mr. Brush tool, and if at all you don't have the Mr. Brush tool right here, you can find it below here. So after selecting the Mr. Brush tool, these are the settings. So whichever tool that you select within Photoshop, the settings are always going to be above here. So for the Mr. Brush tool that we have selected, simply come right here and set it. So just come to the hardness and make sure it is set to 0, and soft round brush has been selected. Make sure the brush is clean by selecting the clean brush option, and we have two options right here. One is saying load the brush after each stroke, and the second one is clean the brush after each stroke. So we want the brush to be clean since we're going to be dealing with different colors regarding skin tone. So we want the brush to be clean and not carry color from one area to another. So make sure you select the option that says clean the brush after each and every stroke. The weight is going to be 9% because we don't want the brush to spill color as you're painting. We just want it to be as dry as possible. We don't want the wetness to be all the way up. So you can use 9 or 9 and below. The load is 75, mix at 90, flat 100%. So this option that says you're going to leave it set to 10, smoothing for the stroke, set to 10%. Then make sure sample all layers is not turned on, because when you leave this turned on and you try painting on the skin, you can notice that it creates this kind of black texture or rough texture on the skin, because you are painting back textures and the brush is sampling from the texture layer and painting back textures in the color layer, which we don't want in this case. So make sure sample all layers is not turned on, and you can now come and hide the high frequency or the texture layer. The reason for this is because we don't want to be distracted by the textures as we are working on the colors. That is why we have decided to hide the textures or the texture layer or the high frequency layer. So after doing that, it is time to apply the Mr. Brush tool, and we do the refining process on the color or the colors or the skin tones of this very image. So in order to work on the textures, or in order to work rather on the colors of this very image, after hiding the texture layer, we are going to come and start applying. So when you're applying the Mr. Brush tool or using the Mr. Brush tool, always retouch at a distance and don't zoom all the way in, because when you zoom all the way in, you won't be able to see the uneven skin tone transitions in your images. So always retouch at a distance so that you can see the uneven skin tone transitions, and it's also going to help you retouch better or retouch faster. And after doing that, the other thing, if at all your Mr. Brush tool is showing a plus icon, simply press the caps lock key on the keyboard. Then also, if at all you'd want to increase or reduce on the size of the Mr. Brush tool, you can use the open and close brackets on the keyboard, decrease or increase on the size of the Mr. Brush tool, depending on the area that you're working on. So if at all you have understood all those do's and don'ts, or what you should do for the Mr. Brush tool, it is time to apply it to refine the image. So how to apply the Mr. Brush tool? You make sure that it is relatively small and it is within the colors that you're trying to work on. So for example, the forehead area, I'll make sure that it is slightly small, and I'll simply left click and hold down and I mix a given area. So you left click and hold and you mix a given area. So you reduce on the size and mix those colors that are looking alike so that you can create a little bit of harmony amongst them. So if at all you find a color where it shouldn't exist, you mix it to blend and be part of a color that is prominent in that given area. So you can see that we have a little bit of midtones in this highlight area. So I'll mix those midtones to be part of the prominent color, which is the highlight in that area. So I'm just going to left click and hold down and I mix. Then you release the left click button and simply go to another area, left click and hold down and mix that area. So every time you're going to a different area, simply left click and hold down and you mix that area. So where the colors are transitioning from one color to another, just get a tiny brush and simply mix the borders of that area so that you can create a nice and seamless transition between the color of the skin tone in that given area. And the other thing, you always have to take the strokes of your Mr. Brush tool in the direction or how that area is shaped, in order for you to maintain rather the original shape of the model's face. So you can see I have to keep on playing around with different sizes of the Mr. Brush tool, just like that. So when we come back to the texture layer and we activate it, or we reactivate it by making it visible, you can notice that we have worked on the forehead area, and you can see that we still have the original skin details or the textures. Let me just zoom in slightly so I can see the textures. So this is the before and this is the after. We still have the original skin textures in this very image. So that is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the image, and I'll see you later on. So I'll just hide the high frequency layer and I continue working at a distance rather. And let me just try to forward this because I don't want this to be a very long tutorial. Hello, welcome back, and you can see now this is what we have after using the Mr. Brush tool, and you can see this is the before and the after for just using the Mr. Brush tool. And now the image looks better than it was at the start of the video. So right now we just want to apply a second technique, that is going to be removing or fine-tuning the areas that we may have missed out when we are using the Mr. Brush tool to do the skin retouching. So that is known as the Lasso tool. So remember, we have now turned on the texture or high frequency layer, and now just want to come and get the Lasso tool and make sure it is in new selection mode and with the feathering of 22 pixels, because we don't want the edges of our selections to be very rough. We just want the edges to be as smooth as possible. That is why we have put the radius to 22 pixels. And still on the low frequency layer, simply left click and hold down to draw or select over the skin area. You can see, but as we're doing this, keep away from the edges of the image or even the eyebrows and the hair. Just keep within, leave a reasonable distance between the skin and the hair, even the eyebrows. Then you're going to come back to filter, and you're going to come back to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So what you're going to notice, that we are going to be having the radius that we had for, or initially for, our color layer. So with this radius, you can either left click and hold down and you drag this radius up to a point when you're having a very nice and natural skin texture for your image. So at around 21, that is when I have a nice texture for this skin. Then if at all you're not comfortable with doing this, just multiply the radius that you had for your frequency separation by 3. So 7 by 3 is 21. I'll just type in 2, 1, and you can see that we have a natural looking skin texture for this model. So this is more of a fine-tuning kind of step to fine-tune the areas that we may have missed out when we're using the Mr. Brush tool. So I'm just going to be applying this onto the rest of the skin. So this select, you can simply go and straight ahead work or make a new selection on a different area, and it's going to automatically deselect the previous selection that you had for your image. So I'm just going to be doing this onto a skin area, and you can see it perfects or makes the skin look a little bit better than it was before. So you can see that this is more of a fine-tuning step to make the image look better. If at all we may have accidentally skipped out or unretouched some areas when we're using the Mr. Brush tool. So I'm just going to do this, and you can see right now the image looks better. And now you can even come and apply it below here to make the image look better. So if at all the effect is too much on a given area, you can right click on that selection and come to fade Gaussian blur and simply reduce the effect in that area so that it can remain looking as natural as possible. So I'm just going to make a new selection on this other side and also apply our Gaussian blur radius. So I'm just going to do this. So I'm just going to select this other area, and you right click and come to Gaussian blur just like that. And you can see it perfects the areas that we may have missed out when we are using our Mr. Brush tool. And like I said, if at all the effect is too much, you can simply right click on the selection and you come to fade Gaussian blur, and you can fade or reduce on the effect in that given area. So just come and fade it out. So you can notice that I've not applied it on the nose, because when you apply it on the nose, oftentimes it makes the nose look a little bit flat and it won't be looking great at all. So I'm just going to not apply it on the nose area. So you can see what we have right now. So I just apply it this side of the neck just like that. Right click, come to my Gaussian blur, and right now when you're done working on the skin area and mixing or working on the skin tones and blending them, I'm just going to deselect there. The next thing is going to be cleaning up the image or removing the blemishes. So you can see this is the before for our skin retouching, and this is the after before and after. Right now the image looks better skin tone wise, but when you zoom in the image, you can notice that we have blemishes or skin imperfections right here in the model's face. So just want to clean those up. So remember, blemishes are part of the texture layer or the high frequency layer. So just come and select that layer, and you can come right here to the clone stamp tool, because that is what I prefer to use. With the hardness set all the way to 0, the mode is normal, opacity in the flat 100%, align is selected, and sample has to be set to current layer, because we only want to work with the information which is the textures in the currently selected layer. So you can reduce on the size by using the bracket keys on the keyboard to reduce on the size. So how to remove a blemish? Simply hold down the alternate key on the keyboard. Then if at all using Mac, it is option. So you can left click. So hold down option or the alternate, left click on an area that is close to the blemish to sample clean skin, and simply make sure it is slightly bigger than the blemish that you want to remove, and simply left click over the blemish to eliminate it. So that is how you can use the clone stamp tool to clean up or remove blemishes from the image. So I'll just simply forward this because I don't want this to be a long boring process. So take your time and clean up the blemishes of your images so that you can have a better retouched image. I'm sorry if at all my PC is lagging a little bit. I just wanted to show you how it is done. So I'm just going to zoom out and try to remove these blemishes just like that. And now you can see it is a very natural way to do the blemish removal. And now you can see the image is now getting to look better. So when it comes to these other areas that we have these prominent blemishes, you can simply use a slightly bigger clone stamp tool and copy and brush over those blemishes to eliminate them from the skin area. And now you can see that we have removed or cleaned up most of the blemishes regarding this very image. And let me show you a quick before and after for the retouching process of this very image. So you can see this is the before and this is the after, before and the after. So this is how you can do frequency separation, skin retouching in Photoshop from the very start to the very end. And if at all you have learned a thing or two from this video, don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you have been watching and you're not yet subscribed to this channel, Ronix from Ronix Photography. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in more amazing tutorials, and don't forget to keep practicing and also keep creating.